we have an expert here. I've had the opportunity to hear Alan over a 4-year period, and it is true, as you saw, he's over 98% accurate, or his company, in predicting some of the changes to come in the economy and some of the trends. This morning he spent about 90 minutes with some folks upstairs, and we really talked about, as a university, what are we doing and what should we do to prepare for the future so we have a good economic base. So ATSU continues for many of the younger faculty and staff and leadership out there long after some of us have moved on. And so when you think about a university that's been around for 123 years, we really have to think strategically about being around the next 10, 15, or 20 years from an economic standpoint. So you're going to hear some wonderful things today and learn some wonderful things. Alan asked about AT Still, and so we spent a little time out in the lobby earlier and talked about the history of the university, a little bit about the painting and its meaning. And we'd like to present you with this. We can mail it for you if that would be easier, but present you with a signed print of what we call the Healing Touch, to remind you of your time to the
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Please write questions down as he's going, and he also encourages questions during the time, so feel free. I know you're going to have a lot of them. Thank you.
Thank you. It is good to be with you, and for the next 50 minutes or so we'll be talking about the economy. Please do ask questions. I can't help but notice that for a guy who deals with distribution, statistics, and curves, there's only 3 people on this side, everybody else on this side. That's you're the anomalies and the outliers. But, you are the extreme outlier, by the way, which in my world means you're statistically insignificant. So that's just, it's always good to start off by insulting people. I learned that in speaker school. We are economists, which means that what we do is inherently boring. But I'm going to try to make it relevant, and I do want to answer your questions, so we'll make sure we have time for that. I'm not just going to try to just talk and fill the time. I'd like to make this as meaningful, as impactful as we can, which means your questions are really important. As was mentioned, our accuracy is certainly important, I think, to the discussion, and so let's just start with that. We'll take just a couple minutes. Otherwise, there's no reason to listen to me. I'm just another economist if I'm not accurate in what I do. And our accuracy is based upon 2 things, duration and deviation from forecast. The GDP number for the U.S., for instance, we put that forecast in place 12 months before the end of 13, so December 2012. You can see the deviation was just 0.7%, 12 months into the future. And on down through the list. Industrial production for China, for Europe, for the U.S., employment down at the bottom. I want you to know this because A, again, there's no reason to believe me if I'm not accurate, and B, most of my peers do forecasts on a rolling basis. They will monthly update their forecasts, or at the most, at least I should say, quarterly basis. Then they get to the end of the year and talk about how accurate they were. You need a vision of the future that actually works for you if you're going to have time to plan. I'm going to be asking you to spend money, by the way, before I'm done, not on me, but on your own futures. And I'm going to be asking you to believe in a future that's going to require you to think differently than the past has taught you to think. There are some people in this room who are young, and you're going to be facing a change from everything you've encountered. And some older folks, I'm going to pick on you, sir, because you have white hair and a white beard. You have seen a lot of what we're talking about. You should become very valuable in the conversation as the years go forward. But unfortunately, because of your age, you'll probably become increasingly irrelevant as you go forward. But if you want to know the answers to the problems that we're going to be discussing, this man has a lot of them because of his age. He has seen it, he has lived it, and he can guide you through it. I just set you up as a seer. I hope you appreciate that.
I am the library director.
Plus you have all the answers on the shelves anyways. That's right. And a startling resemblance to St. Nick's, but we won't get into that just now. I want you to see the U.S. economy for what it is. That's what this graph is. It's rate of change, which is a concept that's just simply mathematical, but it's a pressure curve. Where's the economy going and at what speed? The U.S. economy, therefore, it can be measured off a 0% growth line. Do we spend most of our time growing? Absolutely. Most Americans, by the way, don't get that. They think we're kind of an old, dying, stodgy kind of economy, not a vibrant one, but we are vibrant. Before we get done lunch today, you're going to see that the U.S. economy has a whole lot going for it that people don't talk about. A lot of things going right that the media doesn't talk about. I want you to have a vision of the future that says, hey, you know what? We got a lot to invest in, and we have a lot of things that are going right, and we should be excited about the future. If you're looking for a doomsday scenario, That's not going to occur in the next 4 or 5 years. There's a doomsday coming, but that's about the year 2030. And in between, we have a lot of upside potential that we want to make sure that we grab. You can also see recessions occur very regularly. That's just the business cycle. Washington doesn't believe in a business cycle. You can not believe in it if you don't want to, but you can see that it happens. About every 10 years, on average, there is a recession in the United States. So the next one occurs at the end of this decade, 2018, 2019, there is a recession. It'll be about 2001, 2002 in depth, in case you're wondering. It's not going to be a major event to the university, but it could be a significant event in your lives if you're not prepared for it investment-wise, if you have children growing, if you have children who'll be looking for jobs, that sort of thing. We're going to concentrate today on the next 4 years, the 2020s, and the fact that there's a Great Depression coming and what you might want to do to get ready for that, which is a pretty tall order inside of 40 minutes. This is the forecast. It's always good just to go to the bottom line. This is your life as you go forward. Life is good. The university, higher education, private, non-profit higher education tracks with the economy. So a vibrant economy is good for you. This is going to mean that people have money to spend. They're going to want to spend it. The upbeat look in America should be growing stronger as years go forward. Every year compounds that upbeat look until we believe we're invincible, and that's usually when a recession happens. We are going to continue to grow. Your investments will grow. You're going to find yourself in a positive environment. Now that's just a forecast. Now I have to prove it to you. I like to start with the bottom line, and then we'll work backwards into why you should believe that. The rate of change methodology that we use is on the screen behind me. It's simple. You take monthly data, you smooth it out into a 3-month moving total. You take a year-over-year comparison of the 3-month moving total using the formula on the screen, and you come up with a rate of change. It's called a 3/12 or simply a 3/12 rate of change. That's just business cycle pressure. Mathematically, if the rate of change is going up, it means the subject series is going to improve. If the rate of change is going down, the subject series is going to deteriorate. It's pretty simple. And there's no deviation from that. It's a question of degree, not direction. Because that 3/12 can be pretty volatile, we also smooth it down to a 12/12 rate of change, which is the best way to look into the future. We're going to look at a couple of those. A 12/12 rate of change is a year-over-year comparison of annual data that will allow us to see comparisons and find leading indicators that will allow us to do a forecast. For instance, if we look at what the personal consumption expenditure is, that's what a PCE is, what people spend on higher education and compared to what we'll spend on everything else, you can see that there is a cyclical identity. It's certainly not perfect. And in times of slower spending, as did occur in 2001, 2002, higher education felt the slower rate of rise. When it comes to the Great Recession, there isn't that kind of decline, just a slowdown. We saw that people's willingness to spend money just kind of decelerated, and then when the economy bounced back up, so did spending on higher ed, and now that people are spending less money in terms of the rate of rise, it's showing up in what we're willing to spend on higher education. And that will be a relationship that works as we go forward. So what happens to the consumer, which is going to be what we talk about, is certainly very important. When we look at the details of higher education overall, the annotates are much more important than the graphs. I tend to really like graphs, but the bottom line is there's a lot of weakness that's showing up in higher education right now. The economy is showing some signs of weakness. And where that weakness is showing up is in the December, January numbers and what people are willing to spend. Last year was a weak year. The rate of growth at 4.6% was the slowest rate of growth in higher education in 38 years. This is a sluggish environment, and my forecast in the bottom right-hand corner says that it's going to stay sluggish. It's going to slow from 4.6 today to about 4.2. And then from 4.2, it's going to get on, rebound slightly to 4.5 by the end of the year. Again, still below the 38-year point, and that means that 14 is another sluggish year for getting people to spend money on higher education in general. When we look at non-profit higher education, it's the same relationship. It's a little more exaggerated because it's a smaller data set, but what happens to the consumer certainly does matter to not-for-profit higher education services. And that trend line is exactly the same as the other. The rates of change on top are coming down, which means there's downside pressure on what people are willing to spend. The blue line is going to slow in its rate of rise. We're going to see it slow until about the middle of the year before it just picks up slightly in the second half of 2014. but we're going to end 14 a little below 2013. The run rate is going to slow a little. The amount of dollars coming in is going to slow a little. That's a slightly sluggish environment for the near term. January number was particularly disturbing, with the first time it's declined in January since 2002. Never a good thing when that happens. Let's go to optimism. We'll go back to the pessimistic things a little later. I want to deal with the optimism first, and our optimism is grounded in fact. It's grounded in the fact that lead indicators are up. It's grounded in the fact that jobs are being created, banks are lending, consumers are spending. There's all kinds of reasons to be optimistic about this economy of ours. I want to walk through some of that with you. First off, consumer delinquency rates are at 26-year lows. I don't know if you heard that in the news or not. It doesn't usually make the press. It's usually just economists who like that sort of thing. But consumers are not in trouble. You may have read that we're adding more debt. As we're adding more debt, it's not that big a deal. Where we're adding debt is in student debt, top right-hand corner. This comes from out of the Wall Street Journal. Their data comes from the Federal Reserve Board. It's ticked up, this chart right in through here. We see a little tick up in consumer debt. It made the press. The problem really comes from the amount of student debt that's being added. And that student debt is a problem for later, not for today. That student debt is a matter of compilation, and as it aggregates, as more and more people graduate, as we head into the 2020s, it'll have a tendency to slow down the rate of growth caused by a slowdown in consumer spending. The offset to that is that we have inflation coming upon us. So while the average student with $25,000 in debt, student loan debt, is going to have to pay $290 a month to pay that debt off in the 10-year time period, his or her wages will be going up. So as the wages go up, that $290 every year becomes less relevant. So when you read or hear people say this is a crisis, it's going to overtake the United States, it's going to crush our economy, it's a gross exaggeration. It's going to take some of the edge off the rate of growth is the worst case scenario. So let the students pile on the debt. Personally, it'll just inhibit their rate of growth and their quality of life some, but because of inflation, it's not problematic until we get to 2030. If you have kids with student debt, make sure they do not carry any after 2030, because the last thing you want to do is walk into a Great Depression with debt. No mortgage, no car loan, no student loans, no credit cards, nothing as you head into the 2030s. That's how you survive a depression, one of the ways that you survive. The other way, by the way, is to make sure that they have multiple income streams into the home. Even if it's a single-family home, rental income, dividend income, or if they're married, have their spouse or partner be in a different industry. If they're going to be in industry business, make sure that the other one's a teacher, or a firefighter, or a policeman, or work for government. Make sure they're not in the same segment of the business cycle. That, and tell them they need to be nice to you, because they're likely to ignore all your advice and still need a place to live. So, congratulations. We're creating jobs. That's good. And as we create jobs, that bodes well for the economy. When that job growth slows, though, that means the economy is going to slow, and job growth is going to slow. I say that because interest rates are going to go up. I say that because the corporate profit margin is thinning, and because of healthcare legislation, which is going to cost us jobs and cost businesses money. And as that happens, it is going to slow economic growth, and we think to the point where job growth slows enough to cause the economy to flatten out. Not going to be a recession, just to flatten out in terms of its rate of rise, which is not going to be horribly problematic to the university. What we are going to see pretty long term is that pays are going to go up. Now, that may make you happy. Most of this increase in wages is in benefits, not in cash. And as it's in benefits, it means you can't spend it on rent, you can't spend it on cars, you can't spend it on food. So in general, the population in the United States right now is finding that while on paper they're making more money, their take-home pay is not going up enough to cover even a very mild rate of inflation, 1.5%. Which means that they spend a little less through time. It's a cumulative effect. And as they spend less through time, it slows the economy down. Just expect it. In 2015, wages will go up even more, 2016 even more, 2017 even more, which means the university will be feeling some margin pressure. It means businesses will be feeling some margin pressure until they can raise prices to compensate for the higher labor force. The reason that wages are going up is because it's hard to find skilled labor. I think you know that. To find people who can have the skill set that's needed, who have the right attitude, which is equally important if not more, and who can pass a drug test, is very hard to do in America. And in Colorado, they do away with the drug test, obviously. And it makes for better attitudes too, we might add. But the reality is, it's going to see a bidding up of labor in the United States because of, we're not preparing them. And it's not we as in the university, it's we as in education in general. And in our culture, we're not demanding that they get prepared the same way that we used to. And we refuse to immigrate talented labor in. And that's going to drive up the cost of labor. That is inflation. It's already begun. It'll continue, and it'll pretty much define the next 15 years as we go forward. Inflation will just be something that you and I will become accustomed to again as we go forward. When we look at what's happening in healthcare workers and educational employees' average annual earnings, the rate of growth has been slowing in its rate of rise. It's still going up, but it is slowing. It's on pace now with the national trend, which means this is no longer viewed as one of those, wow, what a great industry, because my pay will beat the national trend in terms of its growth rate. It's really on pace, and as it's on pace, it makes it more difficult to lure people in to an industry when people are often attracted by the compensation. Manufacturing pays more. Annual average manufacturing is $52,000 and change. So it's significantly higher than education and healthcare workers. Education, by the way, is what lowers this. If you just looked at docs, obviously it's higher. But as an aggregate, because education and healthcare is such a broad category, manufacturing is more attractive, and yet people don't want to go into manufacturing. Why don't they want to go into manufacturing, by the way? Any ideas? They're told it's a dirty job. They're told that it's a, physically dirty place to work, and that all the manufacturing has gone overseas. People have bought into the fact that, or to the myth, I should say, that there's no manufacturing jobs in this country, and yet that's the crisis. The shortage is in manufacturing labor in this country. And people who had manufacturing skills, who lost them in the Great Recession, are primarily not willing to move to where the jobs are. Either they can't or they won't move to where the jobs are, or they won't adjust their pay to the new wage, because wages have gone down. So we have a shortage of manufacturing as we go forward. I verbalized that one, so I'm going to skip this. This one's more important for the long haul, so let me just spend a minute or two on this. On the left-hand side, the peak, those are the Jimmy Carter years. And then right after the peak is when President Reagan was in office and Paul Volcker was the Fed chair. They broke the back of inflation that drove interest rates up. And for an entire generation, probably not people in this room, maybe one or two, but for most of us, we remember the other side. We remember the 70s. A lot of us lived the 70s. And we remember it. It's spotty because it was the 70s, but we still remember it. And as you remember the 70s, what do you say to yourself about the 70s? What are some of the things that come to your mind about the 70s? What's that? Gas.
Whip inflation now.
Whip inflation now. Yeah, Jerry Ford. Failed campaign. Absolutely. What else? Don't you remember anything good from the 70s? Nothing good happened in the 70s? Good things happened in the 70s.
End of the Vietnam War.
What's that, sir?
End of the Vietnam War.
We ended the Vietnam War. That was a good thing. What did you say, sir?
We started paying off the debt from Vietnam.
Yeah, we started paying down debt in the 1970s. You know, in the 1970s there was inflation, there was these things that were talked about, and it was certainly on people's minds, but businesses were profitable, kids went to college, you could get a job. I mean, it was not a bad life in the 70s. It was kind of a cultural thing going on, which is what made it so much fun, but the reality is, economically, it was not a bad time at all. The stock market went up, housing prices went up, and nobody was worried until it got to be the end of the inflationary trend. The reason I dragged you down that road is because we're beginning an inflationary trend, and the most common thing in people's minds is to say, oh no. But I want you to understand the oh no only happens out into the future. In between, it's relatively benign. And the continuation of the deflationary trend is much more dangerous than an inflationary trend. So when inflation comes at 3%, most of us in this room are old enough to go, hey, you know what? So what? What's 3%? And then when it goes to 4%, we're going to go, been there, done that. When it goes to 5%, we're still not going to be terribly worried. But what will the younger people say who have never seen it? What do I do now? So stressed. Let me tell you a quick story. I know we only have an hour, so I don't want to abuse you with stories. But a young lady came to me once, pretty young lady, and she said, you know, my life's a mess. I got to talk to you. She said, I can't pay my bills anymore. And I avoid the phone because their debt collector's calling me. She said, I'm stressed to the max. I said, "You lose your job?" She said, "Nope, worked a job and a half trying to make ends meet. But the cost of gasoline has gone up, cost of food has gone up, cost of my life has gone up, and I'm making the same amount of money because I haven't gotten a raise in over a year." And in less than 3 minutes, I'd helped her diagnose the problem and offered absolutely no solution, which is what we do as economists. So I mean, I fulfill my role perfectly. That's what I do. She looked at me and she said, "But Dad, what am I going to do?" She said, "That's a tough one when you throw the dad thing at me. I'm not used to that. I don't know, go ask your mother." That's what I actually told her. My wife and I had this thing worked out, and those types of things, she does that. Just the way that our life has worked out really well. What did my wife do? What's that?
Put her on a budget.
Put her on our budget, yeah. She put her on our budget. She didn't put her on a budget. Put her on our budget. She wrote her a check. And the next month, she wrote her a check. And the next month, she wrote her a check. And then inflation was gone, costs had gone back down. I said, "You don't need to do that, dear, because the costs were all gone." What did my wife tell me? Mind your own business. Because our daughter had gotten used to that cash flow. There's a rule of bailouts in there, by the way, if you're interested. First rule is that the inflation makes it tough on people. And it can be very difficult for people. And they will come to work stressed. If you have direct reports where their salaries are not keeping pace with the cost of living, they will come to work in a bad mood. And productivity goes down, and life is tougher. And it'll be tougher for your kids if they're not prepared for it, so you got to get them ready. And as we're facing that reality, it means that we have to also figure out how to protect ourselves from inflation, which is by investing in inflation-adjusted assets. One of the best ways to invest in inflation-adjusted assets is to buy rental property. I would suggest you buy single-family rental property, not multifamilies, but single families, because those are the easiest to convert back into sale when the culture changes and the Gen Xers and the millennials can now afford homes. Because the values of multifamilies will go down while the values of single families goes up when that cultural shift occurs. So if you don't already own several single families, you should be thinking about going out and buying them. Interest rates are as low as you're going to see for the next 15 years. Rents are going to be going up. And the generation behind us, they can't afford to buy. So you might as well rent them a home or two. And you'll make some real cash for your own future in the process. Okay, that's a major takeaway. 30 years of decline, they don't have any idea what's coming. 15 years it's going to rise, and then it's going to pop again like it did in the early 1980s. A reason to be excited about the U.S. is because we're energy independent, growing towards that. Useless statistic of the day, last year we produced 84.5% of the energy we consumed. Fracking has a lot to do with it. Wet oil has a lot to do with it. Between natural gas and oil, we are an economic powerhouse in the energy industry. We actually produce more than Russia does. We have a lot less dependence on foreign oil than we've had in decades. This is the stuff presidents used to dream about, and now it's a reality in the land. And we're not going to see fracking go away. It's too important. We're not going to see any change to this. This is one of the things that sets us up for the long haul, because businesses come to this country for this. They come because labor is good here and it needs training, but when it's trained, it's good. We have good work ethic, and the world respects that. But they come more because they know that there's a stable source of energy, and we're a free nation in the ranking of free nations. We're right up there. And they're coming from Europe, they're coming from Asia, they're coming from around the world to America. We can see manufacturing is increasing, and the list of companies that are moving to America, investing very heavily in America. These are global entities most of them are of amazing power, and they're choosing to come to America, and that means that we're doing a lot of things right. Nobody talks about this in Washington, but it's extremely important that we get this. This means that economic growth is happening. We're not just in recovery, we're not sick, we're growing. It means that there's potential in positive things. I also want you to know that we're a good people, and that we're not killing the planet. The source from this is the U.S. government. The government does not tell people this, by the way. For the life of me, I don't know why they don't tell us this. I have no idea why this is a secret, but I got this from a government website. I embedded this 3 times to make sure that I'm not missing something. This is the government's own statistical output for anybody to consume. We have reduced our carbon dioxide emissions back down to October 1995 levels. We did that in December 2012. In essence, we met the Kyoto protocols. The only nation to do so, by the way. And nobody told us. Mind-boggling to me. So we're growing in energy capabilities, we're growing in population, We're growing in terms of our capabilities in many different areas of technology, and we're not killing the planet in the process. Lots of good things going on. And on top of that, we have the Panama Canal project coming back on track, which is going to help the economy. Europe is going to help the economy. They're going to have a mild recession, but they're not going to fall apart is how they're going to help us. Falling apart in Europe is a really bad thing. China is actually more the worry. China's got some bubble things going on. They got some really dangerous things going on. It's a question of whether that just deflates us in 2014 later this year, or whether they actually blow up. I'm going with the deflation aspect, where their slower rate of growth just means less exports, which takes some of the wind out of our sails. But China is fundamentally really messy underneath the veneer. Somebody from China that I've talked to says the way to understand China is that it's the world's largest Hollywood set. Everything looks great until you get behind the scenes. And when you get behind the scenes, you realize that this thing's just facade, and that's a lot of problem going on behind it all. There's a debt bubble going on, and that's probably more dangerous than we realize. There's a demographic problem going on, and those numbers are pretty easy to project. That's a real problem for China. We have our own demographic problem, which we'll get to. Globally, things are okay. There's some softness out there. You can see that in rates of change, but nothing significant. The world map is just so that I have a reason to tell you that Ukraine is a political event, not an economic event. What's going on there will not hurt us, will not have a large impact on us. Ukraine is 45 million people, so that matters. That economically they don't matter. They produce food for Europe, and they're a place to put pipelines, and that's their reason to be. It has nothing to do with the United States. It has everything to do with Europe. They're going to sell food, they need the cash. The Russians are going to sell oil and gas, they need the cash. So don't expect any major disruptions no matter how this thing plays out. And we can't afford to put Russia into isolation because there's a mutually assured destruction involved in that. So we're just posturing at this point. Iran's another issue. Iran's another issue of just, that's already been factored into the world's oil prices and to the world's thinking, so you don't need to really worry about Iran as we go forward. If there's military intervention, it's not going to disrupt the forecast more than for a few weeks, maybe a month at the most. Life is pretty good at the moment. Reasons to be concerned about the future are shown there, so let's go through some of those. Tapering is occurring. It's likely to stop in the second half of the year. I don't think that's going to disrupt the economy. I think everybody just kind of anticipates what Yellen's going to do, and as Ms. Yellen does her thing, it's not going to cause any real problems, but it's on our list because it's uncharted waters. You never really know. The other things we're going to touch on. I wanted you to see this graph because it's another myth. It's sort of like the CO2 thing. I wanted you to see some truth. The fact that defense spending is so low has nothing to do with the fact that President Obama is a Democrat. We're an apolitical organization. I'm ready to take either side if they're doing something right, and I'll slam them both if they're doing something wrong. You can't blame the president being a Democrat on the fact that defense spending is down. Otherwise, you'd have to say that Clinton was a Republican and Reagan was a Democrat. And have fun with that one. It's just not true. We just like to believe it's that simple. Life isn't that simple. This is going to ramp up in a couple of years. It's going to ramp up because the world's getting to be a more dangerous place, because whenever we greatly reduce our military capability, the world becomes more dangerous. One of the bellwethers you can watch if you're interested, it's kind of an odd thing. Just take it for what it's worth, I suppose. Ships. Watch the amount of ships we have in our U.S. Navy. When we really cut back on the Navy, it really destabilizes the world. The Navy projects power, 90,000 tons of diplomacy is what it's called, but it's also a function of keeping merchandise moving across the world. If it wasn't for the U.S. Navy, commerce would stop. So when there's less U.S. Navy, things become more expensive and they become more hazardous. So you just keep an eye on that. And as long as the Navy is strong, you have a sense of well-being and stability as we go forward. But ships are expensive, so there's a tendency to want to cut back on ships as we go forward. This is something that you're probably very familiar with, but I want to talk about it anyway. It's healthcare costs in the United States. The source for this is the OECD, Europe. The black line is the U.S. I've had this vetted in the U.S. though too, so it's not like it's a slanted European point of view. What I want you to catch is that whether it's on a per person basis or as a percent of GDP, we are expensive in this country. We're expensive because of legalities, tort reform is needed. We're expensive because of inefficiencies in hospitals and in docs' offices. We're expensive because of the payments that are made into the medical system, the standard of living of healthcare professionals. Culturally, we demand immediate satisfaction and immediate wealth. Older people demand to be made well for as long as possible. We have all that going for us. One of the easiest things to catch, though, is the fact that it happens as a function of age. See how we depart from the other nations when you reach 57? That's my age. I have now become the problem. What is the natural cure to the problem, by the way? Death, absolutely. Baby boomers must die. That's the bottom line. I know it's a lousy bumper sticker. I can see your face. Nobody wants that. But until we die, this problem is with us. Now, my brother, Brian, who's my twin brother and partner at ITR, Economics, our firm, his solution is this, and I was his, you have to understand that. We should start a war involving only baby boomers. That would take care of the problem. It would be a slow war. It would be fought in a warm climate, we're pretty sure of that. And Florida's got a standing army, so we're thinking it breaks out in Florida, but other than that, you have to get really aggressive with legislation, or you have to get really aggressive with cultural changes, including health. Yes, sir?
Well, I'm impressed with this graph. I'm curious, does it represent actually, is there benefit spending that much more on the elderly, or is elderly health care in Europe pretty good too?
No, well, no, you're absolutely right. That's the culture part. As we get older, we expect that even with cascading illnesses, we get all the health care that we need to perpetuate our life for as long as we possibly can. Whereas in Europe, they would go, that's a bad break. Next. You're absolutely right. You've got guys.
This is mostly extremely close to death, or across the boards around?
The last 6 months kind of thing.
Yeah, the last 6 months.
Yeah, I don't know if you consider that
It's
extremely
mostly
close. Day before is extremely close. And 6 months is still nice living. Yeah. Congress has got to change this somehow, and one of the ways to change is to tell the students here they're going to work until they're 80. And then you fix the problem. But Congress doesn't have the political will to do that, and they're afraid to do that. Younger people expect that they're going to work until they're 80, if they expect they're going to get any federal benefits at all when they retire. So you can see you're not going to get it, so why not just work until you're 80 and pay taxes, right? That's a great attitude. I appreciate that. Thank you. It'd even be better if you could work 2 jobs. That helps out. We can't procreate fast enough to widen the population. We missed that. We're actually doing pretty good on fertility rates in this country at 1.96. The magic number is 2.1. We're good, but it's not enough to take care of the baby boomer population, which actually looks like this. And then we have a nice, steady population underneath that. So once the baby boomers go, the Gen Xers and millennials are fine. But until we die, there's a problem. You could widen the base, but not through fertility. How do you widen the base?
Immigration.
Immigration. What are we afraid of in this country?
Immigration.
Immigration. So we're not going to do that either. As I travel the country, I say immigration. People think Mexico. And then they start thinking illegal immigration. They immediately jump from legal immigration to illegal immigration. Then they start conjuring up drug runners and all kinds of negative things. And we forget about the 80,000 that we let in on H-1B1 visas who are productive, tax-paying parts of society. And we limit it to 80,000 H-1B1 visas now. I mean, we really have narrowed the sluice gates for immigration in this country. Can you tell me the second largest source of immigrants into this country? Not India.
X.
Illegals. If I didn't say illegals, it's illegals. Not China.
Brazil.
Not Brazil. Canadian. Who said Canada? Absolutely right. The HR department knows. It's Canada. So watch out for them Canadians, huh? I know. I live in New Hampshire. I used to live in Arizona. Loved it. Now I live in New Hampshire. And every winter I wonder why. But in any event, right up there next to Canada, we don't worry about illegal Canadians coming in. Nobody patrols the border. You know, there's no fence, there's no surveillance, and we don't ask people. You know, we're not afraid of Canadians. They put up great sheetrock. They do wonderful things. That's a joke when I was growing up. The whole Canadians put up sheetrock. They're easy to find. You ask them to say process, they can't. It's process. Then if you're really not sure, you hold up a Tim Hortons sign, see who shows up. I mean, it's easy. So immigration is a good solution. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Congress is in a position to really open up on immigration?
No.
Is Congress really in a position to change the age rate so that young lady has to work a lot longer and pay taxes an additional 13 years? No. Are they going to do anything to incentivize us to be healthy? Really reward us for changing our lifestyles? No. So we got a problem. Because we're going to double the amount of people drawing down on Medicare between now and 2035. There'll be 80 million Americans. Which means, by the way, all your students get jobs. Which means that there's a reason to be here. But as a nation, that becomes entirely unaffordable. We can't afford Medicare now. We can't afford prescription drugs now. How are we going to afford it when there's twice as many people? The answer is, of course, what's going to have to happen? Taxes go up. And because you have jobs, you should expect that you'll be paying more in taxes as we go into the future. Congratulations. You're part of the 50% that pays taxes. You get to pay for this. The Congressional Budget Office said that Obamacare is going to cost about 2 million jobs over the next 10 years. See if that happens. They also said that it's going to cost the United States twice as much as they originally estimated. They originally estimated $900 billion cost for 10 years. The revised estimate last year is $1.8 trillion. That gets paid in premiums and in taxes. Again, that is us. So we're going to pay twice as much for a program. We won't discuss the moral value. Just it's going to be expensive as we go forward and slow things down in terms of economic growth. It's not the worst tax that ever happened. That's what this is all about. In case there's somebody who thinks they bought into this is the most egregious tax we've ever seen in this country. It's not. When you right-size it to the size of GDP, it's just a really expensive tax. A larger problem, and this again is for the younger people in the room, is the fact that our debt is not going to ever get better. Well, I shouldn't say ever. The last time I saw an estimate was that we would have a balanced budget in the United States in the year 2060. I did the math. I don't care. That's a non-issue. I mean, we're way beyond just my food puree. This is nothing in my future. And the Congressional Budget Office is estimating that we will add, on average, $1 trillion a year between now and 2038, which is as far as their projections go. So it's going to thin next year, by the way, don't be surprised, but then it's going to grow a little bit more, till the longer-term average is $1 trillion. So we're going to add 15 trillion to today's 17 trillion, $32 trillion in debt. The economy is not going to be nearly that large, and we're going to find ourselves really upside down. And interest payments, the estimate is, will consume 22.7% of the federal budget when we get to the 2030s. And then you layer in Social Security, prescription drugs, and Medicare, and you figure out how this thing is sustainable. And the answer is, by the way, it's not. Russia's problems are known demographically, economically. Europe's got demographic and economic problems. China's got demographic and economic problems. There's nobody that's going to come to our rescue. We're going to find ourselves slipping into a Great Depression because other nations are going into significant recessions, and we'll drag them into a depression while we're at it. And it's because we're a debtor nation without any real hope of change. Yes?
I want to ask you a question about income tax, because I'm aware of the fact that there are many people that live in this country that don't pay income tax. They receive income and they live, we'll use the notion of drug person. They live very lavishly and pay no income tax. Could anything be done, or is Congress, do you think, looking at any ways to change that so that the taxation system becomes a much more fair across the board system as opposed to being burdened upon those that actually have reportable taxable income?
The answer is yes. You want details, or do you just want the yes or no answer?
If there's time later, maybe we can talk about that.
I can give it to you really quickly if you want. First off, most drug dealers live at home. They're not living lavishly. It's the drug kings who are living lavishly. The corner guy dealing drugs, he's living at home with mom. Really kind of a distorted view that we have. But the other thing is, yes, there's a way to capture all that. It's called the fair tax. There are 66 congressmen who have signed on to endorse the fair tax. Not enough to get it to even the light of day. But it started off with 2 congressmen about 10 years ago. It's grown to 66. You Google fairtax.org, and you will learn everything you want to know about it. It's 132 pages of tax rule as opposed to 7,000 pages of tax rule, and it captures everyone. There's absolutely no way, unless you're in a barter system, to get away from this tax. And it replaces payroll taxes, estate taxes, gift taxes, income taxes for corporations, and income taxes for individuals with this fair tax. Again, that captures everyone. And that's what makes it fair. And it is also carries a heavy rebate so that it is not regressive in any way. You're welcome. So there are solutions. Yes, sir.
Well, you talk about this problem about 50% not paying. Isn't it true also though with the change in the gap in income distribution and in wealth distribution? Isn't like 80% of our wealth and income in the top 5% anyway? So you can top tax the hell out of the bottom 50%, but it's only going to have a marginal impact.
There's some truth to what you're saying, but you also have shown some belief in common points of view. Let me put it to you that way. As far as the income distribution problem, is there a discrepancy in income distribution between the extremely wealthy and the extremely poor? Yes. You take the top 1%ers, and their income has gone up much faster than the rest of the nation. Now, everybody with income has seen their income gone up in the same time period. It's not like it's gone down. It's just that the top 1%ers have seen a little over 200% increase in income, while the lower quartile has seen a 35% income increase. And that's what drives people nuts. Why are the rich getting richer? The answer is because they have many more investments, and they own businesses, and they take greater risk, and so they reap a reward for that. But the historical context for that is it's always been that way. To tilt against that windmill makes you feel better, but it never changes a thing. And you can tax the rich too much. If you look at France, sorry, that's I have it from Russell's office. If you look at France and what President Hollande did with a 75% marginal tax on high income earners, they started boogieing out of the country. They just started leaving, and they couldn't hire chief executives to come in to fill slots because the chief executives were saying, why would I want to go live there and pay a 75% tax? You nuts? So you get to a point where you can tax the rich so much that you cause a talent drain, or you cause a capital strike, or it just simply doesn't work anymore. As far as the disappearing middle class, because you kind of touched upon that with your question, the middle class, as you look at the Census Bureau numbers, is actually growing. It's almost 50% of the population. Since Lyndon Johnson established the war on poverty, that number has gone up. And you base it upon adjusted income for inflation and households and everything. There's no trick to this, it's gone up. Poverty has gone down in terms of income in this country, and the rich have gotten a little richer in terms of percent of the population. Upward mobility, according to the Treasury Department, is the same as it was 50 years ago. We're not a worse nation than we were 50 years ago. So our kids have just as much chance to make it to the top as President Obama did, who started with very humble roots 50 years ago and is now President of the United States. No change. And the extremely rich have a 50% probability of not having high income of $1 million or more anymore after 9 years. That's the average, 9 years. By the way, most common reason is death. So if you're making $1 million a year, you just go 1, 2. You get an idea how long you're going to live. Might be the kids. Nobody looks into the kids. The idea being, you can tax the rich only so much before it backfires on you. This country still provides for upward mobility, and if we provide the opportunities, we can know that people will enhance their lives, their standard of living. They will pay more in taxes as they improve their standard of living and their income. We just have to provide the groundwork so that they can do that. Instead of saying, they shouldn't have it, I want it, we should be saying, here's the path to get to where they are. Sir?
If you implemented a fair tax the way you described it, what kind of impact would it have on your charter?
Oh, it was revenue neutral. So unless Washington changes their spending habits, the fair tax is a revenue neutral charter. It doesn't change that. It does change, well, it doesn't change this because it's Congress. What it does change is in the private sector, because it means, and I don't have enough time to describe the details of the fair tax, but what it means is whatever your bill is for April 15th is not there anymore. So you have that amount of money to invest, to spend, to save, or to give away. So the private sector sees more economic growth, and eventually more taxes accrue to the government. But my point is that tax increases in government throughout history, I think I have one of those. Yeah, they're not good at taking tax increases and spending and paying down the debt. They just find other places to spend it. So while there's the potential to change the future, Congress habitually does not take the opportunity to change the course that we're on. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground, and we're almost out of time. I want to make sure there's time for questions. I want you I'm going to skip a bunch of charts because it's only built in the case for softness in 14. We're out of time. I want to talk to you about the stock market, and then one other thing. And then we'll go to the few minutes of Q&A. This is the stock market. It's got a great W. I mean, who doesn't like a great W in a chart? I mean, really, this is, even non-charters say, wow, that's really cool. Look at the run-up on the right-hand side. It's hard to believe that that's sustainable, isn't it? Really, how can there not be a correction coming? It's a question of when is there a correction coming and how steep will the correction be. We are on record at ITR Economics as saying there's a 15 to 30% correction. So if you're into equities, you're going to see your worth go down by 15 to 30% in the near term. I can't tell you what near term is, by the way. I refuse to forecast a date or even a month. That's the best way to be wrong and be remembered as being wrong. I hate it when people come up to me in the airport and go, I lost a lot of money because I went to cash and it happened a month later. I don't want that hassle. But it is going to happen. Here's why. We have a pretty good leading indicator for it, and even the interim moves play out. And it's saying, besides sheer logic, it's saying that there's got to be a correction coming. This is really unsustainable. You'll make money again on the other side, by the way. Don't abandon equities. And if you're younger, you want to make sure you keep putting money into equities. Next trough, move a bunch of cash in. Trough after that, move a bunch more cash in. In the 2020s, equities are going to do fine. They're going to be your friend. You're going to make lots of money. Just remember, late 2020s, for those of you that are younger, those bull runs, double-digit growth, they never last more than 5 years. In the history of the stock market, never more than 5 years. So in the 2020s, count to 5. Then when you get to 4 3/4, pull your money out. For goodness sake, take your money out of the market, put it somewhere extremely safe. Fixed income would be a good option. And then when the depression comes, you have all this cash that you can access. What happens to prices in a Great Depression? They crater. So, for instance, you will be able to take all your cash and buy homes, buy businesses, buy boats. You'll be able to accumulate all the toys you want for life because you happen to be young enough to accumulate all kinds of wealth and then be able to enjoy a Great Depression. And then if you buy the right assets for the rest of your life, you're set up for wealth, your offspring have wealth, you become a despised 1%er. Congratulations. That's what we should tell our kids to do too. No debt. Multiple streams of income, take advantage of equities when it comes. And don't depend upon the government, because they won't be there to help. We'll be too maxed out. Budgets will be too stretched. All right, the other thing I wanted to show you is this list. Please watch for these indicators. If you're a Fox watcher, they have a point of view. If you're a CNN watcher, their point of view, MSNBC, everybody's got a point of view. I have a point of view. I'm a pro-Austrian economist, which means I lean towards free markets. I'm heavily leaning towards free markets as opposed to heavy government intervention. That's a Keynesian point of view. I'm a free market guy, okay? These ignore all that. This is just statistical input. I can be as free market as I want. I can't change these trends. So where these are telling you as a group is something that you should pay attention to. When they're moving in a certain direction as a group, don't be beguiled by Washington or by a talking head. This will tell you what's really going on. So Google it, pay attention, go to our website, read my blog. I blog twice a week. Bottom right-hand corner, what's going on in the economy, the important things of note. And I'm very happy to share that information with folks as we go forward. So there's no reason to wonder what is going on. None. Lots of opportunities between now and 2030s. Duck when it comes to 2030s. Those of us that are older, we're going to be retired. Life is not going to be a problem for us. And if you're prepared for a Great Depression, it's an opportunity, not something to duck and hide from. I'm one of the more optimistic economists you're likely to meet. All right, we have a few more minutes for questions before we have to vacate the room. Ryan.
What do you think the what do you think the inflation rate is?
The inflation rate is stated at 1.5, which means it's actually about 3%. The CPI understates inflation by about 150 bips. Yes, sir.
So you told us not to take money out of equities right now, even though you see a 15 to 30% correction coming in the near future.
Yep.
Would it be smart then to diversify more into fixed equity or fixed assets, and then when we see that 20% drop, reinvest?
As long as you don't trigger a tax event. If you're going to trigger a tax event, then the better thing to do, in my opinion, would be to go defensive, which is still in equities, but you're in a defensive position instead of an index position. That's when you're going to take all the hit, is if you're basically indexed. And most money market professionals track with the index. So you want to specifically look for a defensive strategy. Yes, sir.
And, you know, on a global thing, and I love to know your global thing, but you didn't say anything about India.
It's true.
Do you have any thoughts about where India is going to fit in with everything that comes forward? I mean, they may become the most populous nation on the planet within a very brief period.
They may. They're certainly going to rival China in that regard.
Yeah.
India's beginning to toy with the one-child policy as well. India is going to be a slow-moving giant. They're going to stumble. They're going to bang into things. They're going to be disruptive. But eventually, they'll just continue to grow and become more and more economically important. They have environmental issues. They have cultural issues. They have legal issues. As they slowly deal with those three issues, I think you're going to find a more powerful India emerge. And it is likely to become the most important nation in the region, if not a global power. That's going to take a long time, though, because they're stumbling along like the world's largest town meeting. Sir?
Sorry for another question. You didn't mention anything about water and resources and impact that is thought by some people to have in the not so distant future.
Yeah, water is actually, I don't have it here. We have a list of acyclical industries or industries to invest in or for your kids to grow up into. And water recycling and water resources is number 2 on the list. Not that they're ranked in order of importance, but the idea is certainly that we are aware of the importance of water, whether it is desalinization or use of gray water, home gray water, all sorts of potential for water need as population grows. But there are some nice technological breakthroughs that are going on that keep it from becoming a crisis. Are you familiar with Dean Kamen?
Yeah.
Dean has developed a refrigerator, university-sized refrigerator for a dorm device that will take horrible water out the back and produce potable water out the front. Mass-produced, the unit costs about $2,000. So in essence, a home in Mexico, which is where it's being tested right now, that has no access to clean water, immediately has access to clean water. That really helps that whole water shortage fear scenario as we go forward with that type of technology being tested now. First tested in Africa, now being tested in Mexico. That's right.
Did your company predict the housing bubble?
We certainly did. We were on record back in 2003, 2005, and in 2007. We were literally screaming it to all of our clients, be careful, this is all going to fall apart because of CDSs, MBSs, and the financial markets looking so fragile. Very much so. That's part of our website. You can go see those calls by year, stock market and housing.
You predict one for education, for a bubble in the education market?
I think we're going to see a shift, and that a lot of the Ivy Leagues, and by the way, no, I won't go there. That's a different thought, take too long. We're going to see a shift. We're going to see people go to where the money makes sense. I can get a job that will give me this income so that my education now makes sense at that cost. We're going to see, therefore, the community colleges, the smaller schools, and distance learning continue to grow in popularity, even among higher income people. People who are making over $250,000 a year are now even thinking about, is it really worth sending my kid to? Unless they're a legacy and have this strong tie, they're really wondering about the reasonableness of spending $250,000 so that my kid can earn $50,000 a year. Does that make any sense at all? And the answer to a lot of people is no, you're going to go to a different school instead. I have a daughter, my youngest daughter, you know, I have 6 children, just so you know. She's my youngest, and we're very close. She's starting school next year, college next year, as a fine arts major. As an economist, I'm going like, are you kidding?
Yeah, I've got to pay attention.
That's right. But as her dad, it's like, well, if that's what your intent is, then we've got to make sure we make the best of this. So we have to balance the 2 worlds and make sure she goes to a school that makes sense because we've gone through what kind of job she can get on the other side. And I think more and more people will be doing that, Ryan. Yes, sir.
One thing that confuses me, why has there been this dramatic increase in the cost of education? Is there some simple phenomenon? Because it really has been huge, right? But it's so much more to go. And it's way above inflation, way above. Is there some factor causing that? I mean,
it's a bit of a tulip scenario where for a long time people thought that the value of the education at the name brand institutions was worth the money. And if you find that that's actually going on, then you naturally charge more as you go forward, and you raise people's wages, and you erect wonderful buildings, and you raise the cost structure, and it sort of becomes an upward spiral that has to be met. It's when people stop saying it's worth the money that you begin to find a reality set in on the cost structure and the compensation.
But it's across the board. It's almost all schools have really gone up, right?
Yeah, because as the name brands go, then the others know that they can follow suit, just have to be more deliberate.
They charge more. What do they do with the money? I mean,
Well, you're faculty, you know what they do with the money. It's all in your pockets, right? This is the end of this discussion, I know.
I know you had a question for a while, go ahead.
You were talking about that you're predicting interest rates to go up.
Yes,
That means bonds are going down.
Yes.
You're saying equities are going to go down. Where do you recommend we go?
you're asking investment advice, so I have to be very careful. You want to think about, depending on your age, a fixed indexed annuity, which is a very good vehicle, by the way, and it allows you to sleep very well at night, or you look into assets that will increase in value with inflation, rental property being a good one, commodity ETFs being another. Our upcoming book, and I don't have time to go through them all with you now, Prosperity in the Age of Decline actually lists different funds that people should consider investing in based upon the inflation scenario, demographic scenario that is coming. But there are investment alternatives as we go forward. But you're right to stay away from bond funds. Buy a bond, a muni, they'll stay above the rate of inflation. You're just not going to sell that thing. You're just going to hold it until maturity, and you'll be okay. Thank you all.
Great.
It's
Yes.
great to be with you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.